Hi ho, hello, and welcome to the show. I know it's called Legal News Analysis of the Week, LNAW, whatever you want to call it. It's supposed to be done once a week. Initially, when I was starting this out, I did do different news topics once a week, but things come up, especially on Fridays. Even if I wanted to pre-record this earlier in the week, it just gets so busy that I can't always do that. But moving forward, I will try to do this once a week. I do have the GoPro set up, the GoPro video camera. I don't think I've had it set up during one of these LNAW segments, but previously when I used to discuss various legal topics such as Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, whatever, I did have the GoPro, and you have a beautiful panoramic view of the office, the lovely Sandia Mountains behind me as we approach the sunset hour here in downtown Albuquerque, and a view of downtown as well. Behind me, I just found out recently that it is called the Sandia Mountains. I didn't know this until recently. It's called the Sandia Mountains because during sunset, the radiating glow of the sun, the mountains, creates a watermelon color in the sky in the mountains. And watermelon in Spanish is sandia, so it's called the Sandia Mountains. You have great hiking there. Sandia Peak, the famed Sandia Peak, tramway that goes up to a restaurant on the top of that mountain. So definitely worth checking out. And I also have today the LNAW hat. I think I had a good hair day today, but it is late on a Friday, so let's just leave the hat on. I'm going to do something I don't normally do today. I'm going to discuss two different news topics in different parts of the country. The first is the Parkland school shooting involving Nicholas Cruz. He was sentenced to life in prison down in Florida by a Florida jury, and a lot of people are upset that he was not sentenced to death. It was the jury there. I mean, here in Albuquerque and a lot of other places, the judge will do the sentencing, but there, Florida, I don't know if it's a populist thing or what it is, they have the jury do the sentencing. So that was that. The judge read the sentence that the jury came down on. A lot of people were upset. You can understand, the emotions of people who had family members in this shooting. Some of them were walking out as the sentence was being read. And then in Baltimore County, Maryland, Adnan Syed was previously convicted of the 1999 murder of Hyman Lee. That case has been completely thrown out as of a few days ago. Originally, so obviously there's a different set of characters there at that DA's office in 1999. Now you have some new set of eyes and ears. There was also pressure from, I guess, a TV show. I haven't seen it, but it's one of those apps, Netflix or one of those apps. It was a show called Serial. Apparently it brought attention to this situation. Initially, the DA's office there basically overturned the conviction, but released him on an ankle monitor as they were investigating whether they even had a case for a new trial, and they determined they did not. The case was thrown out as of a few days ago. Unfortunate, because Adnan Syed spent 20 years in prison for the alleged murder of his girlfriend at the time in 1999. Ironically, it's a Maryland case. It's called Brady versus Maryland. That's the case that involves handing over evidence that the state must hand over evidence that's either incriminating or exculpatory towards a particular defendant. Incriminating or exculpatory evidence. Excuse me, I can't talk. But the incriminating evidence would be evidence that more likely makes somebody possibly guilty of a crime. That needs to be handed over to the defense counsel so the defense can fashion their strategy accordingly. And exculpatory evidence would be evidence that would more likely make somebody possibly not guilty or even flat out innocent of a particular crime. That needs to be obviously handed over to the defense so they know what's going on there and making their arguments. So that is that. Now, a lot of people are probably back to Florida. A lot of people are rolling their eyes at the verdict right now in regards to Nicholas Cruz, saying that look what's going on. All these other cases. There have been cases that have been getting overturned, whether it be because of for whatever reason, whether it's new politics or whatever. And that's probably true, but that's also probably gives some. Makes a better argument for the people who are, pro-life or pro-life meaning anti-death penalty, in that they need to, if there is, the possibility of sentencing somebody to death, you never know. And I don't know this Nicholas Cruz situation. If there's a video, I know he pled guilty or no contest. I'm not sure what he pled to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's guilty just by pleading to a case. And even confessions, they may not be voluntary, or it does not mean somebody is necessarily guilty. And there's a lot of factors that go into determining whether somebody is guilty, and if one of those factors are missing or later proven not to be accurate, that could possibly overturn a conviction. And it needs to be really, if we're going to prohibit the death penalty because of those possibilities, I think it needs to be standard across the board, because in 1999 probably everybody there thought Adnan Syed was completely guilty. I'm not saying Nicholas Cruz is not. I don't know if there's a video or what's going on in that case. There have been a lot of school shootings. I don't know about that particular case, but you never know what kind of stuff could come later on. And just to single out and say one particular individual is completely guilty and should be put to death, and it's not similar to these other cases, it really wouldn't be appropriate. It needs to be standard across the board, because you just never know. But that being said, look, I know emotions are running high, and understand the families. I'm watching the Jeffrey Dahmer TV show right now on Netflix, and not only do I think he should be put to death, I think maybe he should have been killed the same way those victims were killed in that. But that's, again, emotion. There's a lot of different things, and a lot of times, the emotion of the actual crime overshadows the guilt or innocence of a particular individual. Like, and I'm not saying Jeffrey Dahmer didn't do this or anything, but I'm just saying that's, philosophically, that's a consideration that needs to be made when doing these kind of things, as far as sentencing somebody to life or death. Now, in Adnan Syed's case, it's unfortunate that the evidence, I think, initially, for Brady versus Maryland, it's a Brady violation if you don't hand over the discovery. They didn't hand it over right away, and it needs to be handed over in a timely fashion. It took 20 years for the DA's office to discover and really make a determination that he was, the case should be thrown out, and it took the pressure probably of that TV show to even do that. And I'm also hearing that the judge in that case, a witness wasn't called by the defense, and the judge in that case said that was defense strategy, but apparently that witness would have placed Adnan Syed at the library during his girlfriend at the time, Hyman Lee's murder, and obviously that would have been an alibi situation. So there's a lot of, it's unfortunate right now that these kind of things are happening on both ends, that there's school shootings, and people are also threatening, or the situation with Adnan Syed, where basically people are being found exonerated or found to be not guilty or innocent of a crime 20 years later. And then the school shooting situation with Nicholas Cruz, and also now I'm understanding that jurors are getting death threats. Leave the jurors alone. Look, I've talked about this before. I'm not like always a big fan of the juries. Even a few weeks ago, had a trial where we talked to the jury after trial, and the jury decided to opine on my co-counsel's choice of dress, and that she should wear a power suit. And it got to the point where the judge called us back the next day, all the attorneys, to apologize for that situation with the jury. And then, previous to that, I've had juries who maybe looked at a defendant and they thought, okay, after we talked to them after the verdict, they'll say that we thought more likely than not the defendant committed the crime, even though we have all the attorneys and the judge has hammered home the fact that it is beyond a reasonable doubt, and the jury instructions. And I think in that same set of characters, a juror said that he wanted to know what priors the defendant had, even though they weren't supposed to be introduced. But I always find it informative